Hello and welcome once again everyone. Today's video is about the Puerto Rico. I decided to wait a few weeks for the hysteria to calm down surrounding the Puerto Rico event over the holiday period. As you can see, I used one booster to help in what was pretty much a horrendous grind to get this ship. Sure, there were a lot of other rewards along the way, including the Tier 7 Premium Gorizia, on which I released a video recently, but a load of nice prominent camos for Tier 8 ships, and quite a bit of coal and steel was accumulated in the process of grinding out these directives. These directives really did feel quite excessive, and did require a lot of games in high performance premium ships. But when your time is limited, it also requires you to win a lot of games, which adds increased pressure to do well. I found myself in a situation where I wasn't playing for fun anymore, but simply to win at all costs, to get those extra win bonuses required to shorten the grind. After being team killed at one stage in consecutive games, I just lost it and found myself shouting at the monitor and screaming expletives at a Zhao who had torped me from the back line, putting all 8 torps into my Thunderer. Breaking point had been attained. Just before the event ended, I did notice over 100 players were on the Hall of Fame for this event, meaning they had completed all 7 directives. My immediate reaction was I felt sorry for all of them. But enough about this event. Is the Puerto Rico actually worth it? The answer is a very ambiguous yes and no, which obviously requires further explanation. The answer is yes, if you are an experienced player looking for something a little different. Then Puerto Rico offers you a real challenge. Before I forget, I've added the complete ship build, including captain skills, after the main highlights, and the timestamp is here on screen for your convenience. Puerto Rico's main armament offers the heaviest broadside available to any cruiser in World of Warships, a truly scary 12 305mm guns. Now, those seasoned captains who have played Alaska will feel right at home with the handling of these main guns, as they are identical except for one major difference: the dispersion. Puerto Rico's accuracy leaves a lot to be desired. It is noticeably worse than that of Alaska, leading to dispersion, trolling the player at times, and there are some prime examples of this coming later in this video. One peculiar note on this though: I've found the dispersion to be acceptable at longer ranges, but strangely enough, at close or even point blank ranges, it can really feel quite unsatisfying at times. So let's look a little closer at Puerto Rico's main battery armament of 12 305mm guns. After playing with her for a while, 2 things quickly become clear. Firstly, just having a firing range of 18.8 kilometers, Puerto Rico simply lacks effective range. The majority of Tier 10 cruisers can simply outrange you. Moskvas, Stalingrads, or any kind of kiting cruiser, like Zhao, Henri, Hindenburg for example. Sure, you can mount a spotter plane, but having to give up the radar consumable is just simply not worth it. You could also mount the range mod in slot 6, instead of the reload mod, but once again these slow reloading guns will become even slower, lowering your DPM, so it just doesn't feel worth it. Secondly, Puerto Rico doesn't have very good firing angles. Having 50% of your gun power at the rear means you have to show uncomfortable amounts of broadside to get all your guns firing. Puerto Rico is very well armoured. Its citadel is protected by 310mm of armour. And to be clear, being a cruiser, even a so-called supercruiser, this is pretty impressive. During this opening engagement versus the enemy Ohio, I took up a very well defended position using the island to effectively make it a 1v1 situation, and despite getting surprise spotted and not expecting a battleship to be already so wide, I wasn't angled properly and could easily have been deleted being another cruiser in this position, only for this exceptional armour. In terms of pure survivability, Puerto Rico is second only to the Stalingrad, and even then it's a damn close race. For a cruiser, Puerto Rico has a large number of hit points, over 71,000, which is further boosted by a large healing potential. It's not quite comparable to Salem or Minotaur levels in this regard, but it's still quite sizable, so it feels very tanky when you combine this with an excellent anti-torpedo damage reduction of 28%, the best of all top-tier cruisers, which is matched only by the Moskva. However, with all these battleship-like protections, Puerto Rico inherits a lot of the battleship-style drawbacks, like with damage over time effects, meaning Puerto Rico burns and floods like a battleship, and the fact that Puerto Rico can only recover 10% of citadel damage with her repair party as opposed to 33% like other cruisers. A single fire will burn for up to 18% of her hit points over 60 seconds, while a single flood will do 20% over 40 seconds. Hence the recommended build after these highlights, which is basically a full tank battleship build, mitigating fire chance, decreasing repair times, etc., all of which I'll cover later in the build section. There is one ray of light on the horizon, however, when it comes to help mitigating this damage, which is Puerto Rico's access to a cruiser's damage control party consumable. This has a much shorter reset timer than battleship versions, so when properly managed, Puerto Rico's consumables can remove the worst of these damage over time effects. So how does one play the Puerto Rico, I hear you say? The answer to that is very carefully and methodically. Avoid open water and use island cover whenever possible. If you can't get in radar range of capture points without cover or getting detected, don't charge forward recklessly. You will be focused down and deleted. The relatively small amount of Puerto Ricos in the game right now are piloted by whales. And no disrespect to whales, they keep the game free for the rest of us, but the vast majority I've seen so far are utterly devoid of any clue on how to play the game, resulting in them being quickly out of position, primaried, and mercilessly sent packing back to port at high speed. So to avoid a similar fate is paramount every time I enter battle in this ship. So taking up positions on the flanks, sitting deep or using islands whenever possible should be at the core of your plan of action. Another little peculiarity with Puerto Rico is that when firing from smoke, compared to the Alaska, that the smoke firing penalty exceeds your detection range by 100 meters, while the Alaska's is 100 meters less than its detection range, despite having the exact same gun caliber. Virtually meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but just something I noticed while playing. Puerto Rico is a very big ship, with a large surface and aerial detection range, so one is forced to employ a full concealment build, which will reduce it down to 13 kilometers, which still allows virtually all opposing cruisers, with the exception of Stalingrad and Moskva, to use their superior detection ranges to dictate the engagement, just like this Minotaur is essentially doing, cleverly playing a DD role, torping us for fun, right up to the point where he randomly decides to smoke up in front of two radar cruisers. I must admit my aiming at this Minotaur was quite poor initially. I misjudged the direction of the smoke from his smokestacks. recognize the threat from the Kremlin, slow down dramatically and turn in. Just barely managed to avoid that volley. Send one back from my front guns in return. We're quite a few points behind in this game. We've lost 3 of our battleships already. I did over 4,000 damage on that Kremlin. The other Puerto Rico is shooting at a Des Moines, and you can see all those shells landed short in the water. And it's something I've started to do on purpose with the Puerto Rico, is to aim above the waterline. And there I get 6 overpens, 2 pens, 1 citadel, and the enemy Des Moines goes down. He does get a volley off just before he died. That enemy Minotaur is still torping away the whole time. I'm just going to put this island between himself and break line of sight. He's still shooting me. Now I'm not going to take a direct line here, as that would be a little bit too predictable. I'm going to skirt around the outside of this island. The other Puerto Rico took out that Minotaur, fortunately. And now there are enemy dive bombers coming in. 2 sets of torps, just as well I didn't take that line. And the AA on the Puerto Rico is very strong, especially combined with the AA consumable defensive fire. The added bonus of avoiding HE spam maintains the integrity of your AA defenses, allowing you to fight off these air attacks. Managed to take out virtually all those planes, duke out the incoming volley from the Kremlin once again. Actually, I'm mistaken, they were Zao shells. So I'm faced here with the Kremlin and a Zao, who instantly sets me on fire. I've just overestimated my speed here. I'm attempting to slow down. Puerto Rico is sluggish, doesn't exactly stop on a dime. Kremlin just disable one of my front guns. And despite having 325mm frontal armor on these turrets, they do have a tendency to get knocked out quite a bit when being fired upon by battleship shells. That Zao is reversing, it would seem. He's virtually stationary. Once again, I'm just going to aim above that waterline. You can see that dispersion really is quite erratic at times. I get 1 overpen, fire the back guns. I get 2 overpens on virtually a stationary target, or now moving slowly at any rate. Once again, aiming above that waterline. See all those shells landing short in the water. Okay, and finally that volley from the back guns results in a double citadel and takes out that Zao. But this dispersion at shorter ranges on really vulnerable targets, like that Zao was in this case, really can be quite erratic. And in situations when you're in dire straits and you really need to land those shells to take out the enemy, can be quite troublesome. And keep some HE pressure on this Thunderer, continue to angle away. He's got multiple fires burning. He's aiming for the rear of that ship. He has fired at me. Just going to slightly angle away a bit more. And he blows up one of my front turrets. The 133mm armor on the sides of these turrets is simply not enough to deal with Thunderer shells. Puerto Rico is not a bad ship, but looking at it on the whole, including the event, which I found to be badly advertised and predatory in nature, it has kind of soured this ship, leaving a bitter taste in the mouth for the general playing community. It's unfortunate because I really liked the whole Dockyard idea, but the result was exclusionary, and that doesn't really excite the player base. But what I would love to see is it return as a reward for a new campaign, for example. We shall see. Before going to the complete ship build, I've added some links, including the Help Me Discord and my own personal Discord in the description below. Now on to the build. Starting with the consumables, I always stress the importance of using premium to decrease the cooldown time of your damage control and add extra charges of defensive AA, surveillance radar, and repair party. The Puerto Rico gets 6 ship upgrade slots, starting off with Main Armaments Mod 1, Damage Control Mod 1, Aiming Systems Mod 1, Damage Control Mod 2, Concealment System Mod 1, and finally Main Battery Mod 3. Moving on to the Captain skills, starting with Priority Target, Expert Marksman, Superintendent, and Concealment Expert for your first 10 points. A very strong 19-point Captain will then include Adrenaline Rush, Basics of Survivability, and Fire Prevention in the training order of your own choice. So let's take a look at what this build means for the ship's final stats. For Survivability, Puerto Rico gets 71,658 points, which is further enhanced by a total of 4 repair parties. Main artillery consists of 4 X3 305mm guns, 2 in the front and 2 in the rear, with 18.8 kilometers in range, with a reload speed of 19.4 seconds. Puerto Rico gets an AA defense rating of 88, which has a very capable max long-range defense of 6 kilometers. For maneuverability, Puerto Rico gets a max base speed of 33.5 knots, a turning circle of 910 meters, and a rudder shift time of 15.9 seconds. Finally, Puerto Rico has a concealment rating of 50, meaning you will be surface detected at 13 kilometers and by aircraft at 9 kilometers. I'd like to thank you once again all for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more. Take a moment to check out some of my most recent videos and leave a comment below. And until the next time, keep sailing it like you stole it.